Alrighty, hey guys. Today is our first day of learning how to do Photoshop, so this is super exciting. I want all of you to pull up your app so that way we can kind of work together. So the first thing we're going to learn is how to create a document because we're not going to be able to get into Photoshop unless we know how to properly create it. So your screen might look a little bit different than mine because I have already worked on some stuff and most likely you haven't. What I'm going to have you do first is there's going to be a blue button somewhere on your screen that says New File or Create or something like that, and I want you to go ahead and click it, and it's going to pull up this new document screen. On your new document screen, like I said, yours might look a little different than mine. It might look the same. There's a lot that goes actually into this created document because it's not like you're just creating a random blank document. You're creating something for a purpose. With that being said, I'm going to go over your preset details first, and this is basically your new document settings. So right here, you're going to see something that probably says Entitled 1, and this is what you're going to title it. So I'm going to name it First Photoshop Document. And you can name it the same, you can leave it untitled, because we can always change it later once we save, which is something that we're also going to learn today. We're just going to go over this really quick. Your width and your height. Width is horizontally how long it's going to be. Height is vertically how long it's going to be. Your orientation, you're going to have two different options. You're going to have portrait, which is it's longer vertically than it is horizontally, and your landscape, which is it's longer horizontally compared to vertically. A lot of you who have worked in Microsoft products might be familiar with something like that. So if you are, fantastic. If you're not, you'll kind of get used to the terms. And right above that, you're going to see something that says pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas. I typically only work in pixels, inches, or centimeters. Sometimes it switches to points and I get a little confused, but that's, kind of the way Photoshop works. Pixels is something that some of you might be familiar with, some of you might not be. Pixels are really cool. They're the teeny tiny little boxes that make up the composition of a Photoshop document. So I know you can't really see them, but if your computers had a lower resolution, you might be able to differentiate. Each pixel is like a different color that makes up the composition of your computer screen. So that's pretty cool. I like working in that. You can do it if you want. Inches is something that's super familiar to all of us. So you can work in that also if you'd like to. I'm going to work in inches for now just because it's familiar. Resolution, I still have pixels. Typically, I use a high resolution, which is 300 pixels per inch, and that's per little inch we have how many pixels are in that 1 inch. So I keep it at 300. If you want to mess with it, you can. You can kind of see how different pictures look in that type of resolution. And then your color modes. This is going to be something that's super important because it's actually going to be on your certification exam. There's 3 different color modes that I personally work in, so I'm going to go ahead and explain that to you. The first one is CMYK. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And this is what I would use if I was printing out a poster or printing out a business card or printing out something on a printer. So I know for a fact that it's not going to stay on my computer. It's going to be tangible. I'm going to be able to hold it. I'm going to use a printer to print it. RGB stands for red, green, blue. And that is something that I know for a fact I'm not going to print. I am going to keep it on my computer. It's always going to be in a digital form. And grayscale is something I would use if I knew I just wanted it to be black and white. So that's about all of the things that you need to know for now in your preset details. So just make sure you look at that before you create a new document every time, because sometimes it changes depending on what you want to do. Something else that I wanted to go over on this new document screen is the templates. So here you're going to see recent. So this is the recent items that I've used. I have a couple custom ones. I have a couple ones that are in my template. So a letter is a template and a default Photoshop size is also a template. And then I have saved. So these are some of the things. Obviously, there's none in here right now. Some of the templates that I might have saved while working in Photoshop. Then you have photo, print, art and illustration, web, mobile, film, and video. And these are different tabs that you can click on depending on what kind of project you were working on, what you were creating. So there's default Photoshop size, landscape 654. So these are some of the things if you were working with a photo that you wanted to import onto the document, this is something that you might use. Or if you were to print something and you were creating something from scratch, you might use some of these. So you'll see like a letter, which is a normal 8.5 by 11, legal, which is like a legal document, art and illustration. You have all of these, web, so this is like the normal web page size, mobile, so like they have iPhones on here. So if you were to create like a custom wallpaper, these would be good ones to use. And then film and video you also have. So these are always here just in case you wanted to use any of them. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to open our first document. I want to go back to print because I'm just going to have a normal letter size. So I'm going to hit create and it changes that automatically. Create, and then I wanted to show you guys how to save it because one of the most important things, you never, ever, ever want to work on a project and lose all of your data. So messing with Photoshop is one of the biggest things. Finding your own art style is super important. So I'm going to, teach you how to create and save it, and then we're going to work on, the other stuff in Photoshop. But for now, we're just creating and saving. I know we're saving a blank document. It seems kind of pointless, but at least now you know how to do it. So you're always going to find saving and exporting in File. So you're going to have this menu bar up here that's going to allow you to do a ton of things in Photoshop. So File is super important because that's where you create new ones and where you save. So without File, you wouldn't be doing anything in Photoshop. So, there's a difference between saving and exporting. Saving is to kind of save it as a native file so that you can open it back up in Photoshop and continue working on it, where it still has its editing capabilities, and most of the time. And exporting is to export it to where you can pull it up in a different window on a different program. So, most of the time we're going to be saving it. There's two different options. You can save it to your Creative Cloud, which is Adobe Cloud. So you have limited space in there, and you can only access it if you have Wi-Fi. So I encourage you guys to save to both. That way you know you're not going to lose it. So you can save it to your Adobe Creative Cloud, or you can save it on your computer. So I like to put all my documents in a folder on my desktop just because that way I know where to find it. So I would create a new folder in here. Mine's going to look different than yours because I'm on an Apple computer. So you can click new folder, create a folder for all of your stuff. That way you can easily find it. Make sure you save it in a Photoshop document. That way you can see all of your layers and you can go back and edit it in Photoshop. So I always do that. I save it like that. I rename it every time to make it, super simple for me to remember. So remember in the beginning, I named it First Photoshop Document. If you still had it as untitled, you can go ahead and change the name here. So you can click Save, and then to export it, say you wanted to put it on your website, you could go to Export as, it's going to take a minute. And there's different options. JPG, that's going to have a lower resolution, which is nice for when you're just trying to upload like a lot of different pictures or sending an email or something like that. It's going to have a smaller size. And then PNG, you can make it transparent. So if you were making a logo or something, it wouldn't have a white background, which always makes that super easy. So when you're uploading to your website, just use JPG and then click export. So that is how we are going to create and save documents.